All right, let's get right into it. For a long, long time, science has had this bright line, a rule you just don't cross, the 14-day limit for studying human embryos. But what happens when our technology just leaps right over that line? We're at this amazing moment where new science is giving us a peek into the very first, most mysterious stages of human life. And that's forcing us to ask a really tough question. Are our old rules even up to the job anymore?
I mean, think about it. This is the fundamental challenge. The first few weeks after fertilization are basically a black box. It's when the most essential blueprints for a human being are being laid down, but it's happening completely hidden from view. So how on earth can we even begin to understand what's going right? Or, more importantly, what's going wrong during this incredibly critical window?
Well, here comes the game changer. Lab-grown models of embryos, created entirely from stem cells. Now, to be crystal clear, these are not embryos from a fertility clinic. They are these incredible structures, built from the ground up in a lab, that mimic key steps of early human development. For the very first time, they're giving us a window into that black box, letting scientists watch processes they've only ever been able to theorize about before. And this, right here, is the core of the problem. On one side, you've got the 14-day rule. It's been our ethical line in the sand for decades. But honestly, it was always a bit of an arbitrary line, based more on what was technologically possible at the time than on some deep philosophical principle. And on the other side, you have these new embryo models that can cruise right past that 14-day mark. Our science has literally outgrown our ethics, and that's left us in this kind of regulatory no man's land. We need a new map, and we need one fast. So if the 14-day rule can't be our anchor anymore, what can? Well, the proposed solution is a whole new framework, built on one single, really powerful idea: the principle of avoiding sentience. Okay, let's be really clear about what we mean by sentience here. This isn't just about a simple reflex, like when you automatically pull your hand away from a hot stove. This is about the capacity for a conscious, subjective experience, the ability to feel things like pain or to perceive light and sound. The fundamental idea is to make absolutely sure that no research model could ever reach a stage where that's even a remote possibility. And the reason for picking this principle is actually pretty brilliant. The goal isn't to try and solve every moral debate about the beginnings of life. Those are deeply personal. Instead, the idea is to ground the rules in a concern that pretty much everyone can understand and get behind. The idea of preventing any potential for suffering, that's a really solid ethical foundation that most people can agree on. And that's how you build public trust.
So how do you take a big idea like that and turn it into something that works in the real world? The proposal lays out a clear, two-tiered structure for oversight. This isn't about opening the floodgates. It's a really carefully designed system that tries to balance scientific discovery with serious responsibility. The central concept here is to operate within what's being called the pre-sentience safety window. You see, while the old rule just stopped cold at 14 days, these new proposed limits are set way further out, at an analog of day 28 and even day 56. But, and this is key, these points are placed long before even the earliest, most hotly debated point where any kind of sentience could possibly begin to emerge. It's all about building in a massive safety buffer. So the framework basically breaks down like this. You've got Tier 1, which is the standard path for almost all studies, and it has a clear stop sign at the equivalent of day 28. Then you've got Tier 2 for very rare and specific cases, which could go up to day 56, but only under super strict supervision. And holding it all together, the ultimate ethical guardrail is that fixed, non-negotiable principle: no sentience, period.
Let's dig into Tier 1 for a second. This is the default setting for the vast majority of research projects. And the stop sign isn't just a number on a calendar. It's tied to a clear physical event that you can actually see: the closure of the neural tube. That's the structure that eventually becomes the brain and spinal cord. It's a totally unambiguous marker that says, okay, the experiment stops here. This lets us study all that crucial early organ formation without ever getting close to more advanced stages. Tier 2, though, is different. This is reserved for those rare but essential studies that have an incredibly good reason to look beyond that 28-day mark, say to understand how different organ systems first start to work together. But this pathway comes with some serious guardrails: a review by a special oversight committee, a rock-solid scientific justification, and an absolute, no exceptions, hard stop at the 56-day analog. It carves out a path for vital research while still keeping that huge safety margin. Now, whenever you talk about extending a boundary like this, the first concern that always comes up is the slippery slope, right? People worry, if we extend the limit today, what stops us from extending it again tomorrow and the day after that? This framework actually tackles that concern head-on by building in some very specific safeguards. So instead of leaving things up to subjective judgment, the framework provides a practical tool that regulators can use. It's a clear decision tree. It asks a series of simple yes or no questions about any given embryo model to figure out exactly what level of oversight it needs. This makes the whole process structured, predictable, and transparent. Let's just walk through the logic real quick. First question, does the model even have the potential to mimic a whole embryo? If not, different rules apply. If it does, next question, will it reach that key milestone of neural tube closure? If the answer is no, it stays a standard Tier 1 project. But if the answer is yes, that automatically kicks it up to the high-level scrutiny of a Tier 2 review. It's just a logical, step-by-step process. And here's probably the most crucial point for avoiding that slippery slope. The ultimate goalpost doesn't move. The unchanging ethical standard is the pre-sentience principle. Now, the specific biological markers we use to make sure we stay far away from that line, like neural tube closure, those might get updated as our scientific understanding gets better. But the fundamental rule, that core ethical principle itself, is set in stone. And any future update to those biological markers would have to go through an incredibly tough process. It's not something a small group of scientists could just decide. It would require, first, a new and broad international scientific consensus, and second, serious, robust public and regulatory engagement. The boundary can only move with overwhelming evidence and total transparency, not just because someone feels like it. So, after all this talk about rules and frameworks and tiers, let's just zoom out. Why is this research so unbelievably important in the first place? What's really at stake here? The potential here is just profound. We're talking about understanding the root causes of things like infertility and pregnancy loss. We're talking about getting real insights into why congenital disorders happen. And we're talking about witnessing for the first time how our own organs, the heart, the brain, begin to form. This isn't just some abstract scientific quest. This is about tackling some of the most fundamental and often heartbreaking challenges in human health. So if we boil it all down, what do we got? We have a proposal for a clear, two-tiered framework to guide this incredible new research. It's anchored firmly in an ethical principle of no sentience that everyone can understand. And the entire system is designed as a careful balancing act to allow for amazing scientific progress while at the same time building and maintaining public trust. And that leaves us with one last massive question. This framework is an answer for one specific area of science, but the challenge is so much bigger, isn't it? As our ability to rewrite and redesign biology grows at a speed we can barely comprehend, the most important work of all might just be making sure that our wisdom, our ethics, and our public conversations can actually keep pace.